Shoulder day. Before we get started real quick, just a reminder on our contest here. It's a giveaway for a set of Undersun bands, these same red and black ones here, as well as a month's supply of Maverick and a year access to the TA2 workout app. So check out the link in the description if you want to enter. Super easy to do. So this episode is sponsored by Undersun Fitness and Maverick. So with that said, let's dive into it. Shoulder day, combination of bands and dumbbells. Make sure that you're nice and warmed up. I've already done mine. 10 minutes of cardio. Came in, did some light chest work, just some push-ups just to get the muscles nice and warm. And then did some rotator cuff muscle, internal rotation, external rotation, etc. So I highly recommend doing that before jumping into any of your pressing movements, shoulders, chest, or even back for that matter. Now, with that said, we are going to take a back to front approach with shoulders. I've said this before. We're going to start with rear delts. A lot of times rear delts are more neglected than anterior delt, and I'll show you why. We all think about pressing movements for shoulders, whether it's a bar military press or a machine press or a dumbbell press. But when you look at your anterior delt, so the front of the shoulder, which is right here, as I put my arm into position, look where that is. Perfectly lined up here. So when we are doing our overhead presses like this, we are using a ton of anterior delt. So most of the time, on average, most of us don't have any problem with the anterior delt or the front of the shoulder. A lot of times it's easy to neglect the back of the shoulder. So we are going to prioritize that first, and we are going to do a combination of dumbbells and bands for some rear flies. I like to go nice and light with these, but before we even jump into this, we are going to do just one set of pull-aparts with the bands. This isn't so much a warm-up because we've already done a warm-up. This is more to go ahead and get that mind-muscle connection, also pre-fatigue the muscle just a little bit. I find the bands really help me zero in on rear delts because with proper technique for rear delts, you are not pulling backwards. You're thinking about pulling out to the sides. And so with a pull apart, promotes a little bit better technique here. So a little narrower than shoulder width apart, arms right out in front of us. And like I said, pulling the hands out towards the side and back to the middle. So when we're doing our rear delts, we want to think about keeping those shoulder blades as stable as possible, meaning in one spot. We don't want to feel them squeezing toward the middle like we do in a lot of our back exercises. Because when that happens, we start to engage more of our middle trapezius that starts taking over, and it's a bigger, stronger muscle than the rear delts. So we have to be a little more focused here. In other words, better mind-muscle connection. And so one way that I've found that works for me is thinking about, like I said, pulling out to the sides as opposed to pulling backwards. You notice I'm going fairly high with this, where the band is coming right across my face, hands nice and high. We're going to keep a similar angle as we transition over to dumbbells. So watch the difference here. If I keep the dumbbell lower on the body, so chest height or even lower, it's really easy to start getting a lot of movement there at the scapula. See how my shoulder blades are squeezing together? So I want to come a little higher, and just like the bands, we're going out to the sides. Control that tempo. Get a little squeeze there. Control that eccentric. Slower rep speed equals a little bit more time under tension. Allows us to go a little lighter and still keep the intensity up. Shooting for 10 to 12 reps here. Let's do a few more. So a couple things that I try to focus on. One, at the bottom where I really don't have a lot of resistance, avoid the temptation of using that space there to move the weight quickly to generate momentum. It's number one. Number two, the real test of whether you're using a weight that's too heavy is, can you get that isometric squeeze, that little bit of a pause at the top? If it's like up and right back down, then it's a little too heavy for you to control. We're going to stretch real quick here between our sets. All right. What we're probably going to do here on sets 2 and 3, we use the band before our set. Now we're going to turn around. We're going to use it at the end of our set as a finisher, just to crank out another, hopefully 3 to 5 really good reps, just to finish off the set strong, focusing on a really strong contraction. All right, keeping our rest periods about 90 seconds. I don't ever keep a clock, but I find that 90 seconds is just about enough time to grab a drink of water, stretch out real quick, and get set up for your next set. So this is what I'm talking about, this space down here. So a lot of times I'll even stop and start right here. So I'm never even coming into the middle, not even tempting myself to cheat. So starting here, squeeze, and then stopping. You're also keeping constant tension on the muscle that way. That was 7, 8, 9. We're going to do 3 more. 10. Nice. So I'm going to grab that same band. Two, 3, 4. That's perfect. Nice. So someone had asked me about my opinion. Maybe they didn't even ask my opinion. I'll just give you my opinion. Maybe they're just making a comment. But they were talking about doing rear delts on back day, on a pull day. which you absolutely can do. It's kind of the same thing as doing biceps on the same day as back. So we are using rear delt in a lot of our pulling movements, especially when we're doing any of our high pulling movements. Here's the thing though, the only thing to keep in mind, again, some of those other muscles like your trapezius, which is a big strong muscle compared to the rear delts, has a tendency to be a little more dominant. So it does require being very disciplined to go in there and make sure that you're getting more of that targeted work for the rear delts. So definitely an option. It all comes down to how you like to break up your workout split. So there's certainly a logic to it, being that you are working some rear delts in those movements, but again, just make sure that you give them the extra attention they need. It'd be kind of like the same thing saying, hey, I don't really have to worry about doing biceps at all because I'm working them on all my pulling movements on back day. True, but you still want to give them that attention. All right, last set here. Seven, 8, 9, 10, 2 more, 11, 1 more, 12. So for our finisher, instead of doing a pull apart, show you something else that if you like doing high pulls, space pulls, whether it's with a band or whether it's with a cable machine and a rope, same concept here. Just like I was saying with rear flies, we want to try to stabilize our scapula. So we don't want this right here. We want to think about this. So same thing when I do face pulls, the way that I prefer to do it. Instead of thinking about pulling my hands to my face like this, instead I like to think about driving those elbows out wide to the sides. And that way I feel a really strong contraction in the rear delts. So we'll go ahead and finish these. So again, elbows out to the sides, a nice smooth path. It's not linear right here to the face. Drive them out wide. Nice. So that's the only problem when you're doing them with a rope. You can't go out as wide. You can only go as wide as that rope. So if I were to take this real quick, that's caught right now. I have a strap on there, but so little limited here based on how wide I can go with that rope versus if you look with a band, see how wide I can come here? So I'm no longer stuck here. Out nice and wide. Now, if you're to do them with a cable machine, let's try to see if I have, oh yeah, right here. Something like this. Now I'm able to get a little wider. Okay. So we talked about a back to front approach. So that was rear delt. Now we're going to move to middle delt. Now, most of your middle delt exercises, there's a lot of different variations we can do. Of course, any kind of lateral raise or a side raise. So we can do that with dumbbells. We can do it with a cable machine, which honestly I prefer. The main reason why is with the dumbbell, I don't have any resistance right here at the very bottom. It's not until about here. So my really effective range of motion with good tension is from here to here versus a cable machine. I've got resistance even starting here at the beginning. Same exact thing with bands. Some people like doing an upright row. I think it's okay. For me personally, I feel like the traps start to really take over in that movement a lot. So out of all the middle delt exercises, I like to stick to lateral raises. So we're going to do a combination of, I'm not even going to do them anchored. We're going to do them like we did the other day. Go with a light band here. Let me put this bench away. Although we're going to grab it again to do our next exercise. So if I were to do band only, this is the way I prefer them. Step on it with 1 foot, opposite, nice angle of pull. And there we've got good tension all the way through the range of motion. We're going to go ahead and step this up a little bit. Don't need much weight here. We're going to use a dumbbell. And it has a very unique feel to it. All right. Here we go. You know, so now I can come lower here because I have tension all the way through that range of motion. Six, 7, 8, 9. You know, a lot of people that start to use bands always say, you know, it's amazing that they're not more popular than they are. And I think one of the really simple reasons is it just doesn't look that cool. If I come in here with this little teeny tiny band and this little dumbbell, it just looks so easy that kind of really doesn't look cool. It's not very impressive looking. And I really think that is one of the biggest hangups for a lot of people with using them. But they really are a super effective tool. We can also loop this around here if we want. I recommend though putting maybe a cloth, you know, your hand towel or something on there to protect the band from the knurling though, just so you don't wear your band out. One more. Another option, we use these in our workout the other day. It's good, easy option, cost effective. And that's simply putting the band through a pair of fat grips like this. This is a generic brand. I don't even know what they're called. Actually, these are from Dick's Sporting Goods. That's their brand, Ethos. You can just put it right on the dumbbell, just like that. All right, stretch out. I'm going to go over and grab some water. All right. Same process. Five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2 more. One more. Oh. Same thing with our rear flies. I try to get that little isometric squeeze there at the top. And if you can't do it, it's a pretty good sign that you're trying to go too heavy. That's 6. 6 more. That's 9. 10. One more. So 12 reps is probably, if I had to just pick one rep range that was universally my favorite, it'd probably be 12. 10's, nice, and that's kind of like that traditional, range for hypertrophy, but you got to keep in mind that your rep range for hypertrophy goes lower than 10 and higher than 10. You can do 20 reps and still be in an ideal muscle building rep range. So with 12, what I like about it is it allows me to go heavy enough. I don't have to go all the way up to 20 reps, but just light enough where I can focus more on better technique, which also means a better contraction, getting that squeeze at the top, controlling my rep speed. So I just find that my technique is not only better, but also the contractions that I get are better. All right, so we've got one more set of these coming up here. We're probably going to keep these fat grips out for our next exercise. I'm thinking about combining the bands with dumbbells for a shoulder press. We haven't done that over the last 8 weeks. I think we've done a lot of different variations, but a single arm shoulder press with the two, I don't think we've done yet. Now, you notice I do like to switch up my workouts, and it has nothing to do with muscle confusion or having all this variety for the sake of muscle building. No, it's simply just to keep it fun and interesting. Here we go. That's 6. Sorry, getting hard. 7, 8, 9, 10. One more. You know, one thing about having the bands that we haven't talked about that's nice, if you don't have a full rack of dumbbells like I do, let's say you have maybe just 1 or 2 pairs of dumbbells, that in combination with the different resistance levels of the bands, now all of a sudden you're not limited to just whatever that is, 20 pounds or 25-pound dumbbell. It's like you can almost simulate a whole rack worth of dumbbells as far as resistance goes. It's 8, 4 more. One more. Nice. All right, grab a drink of water. At least I'm going to. Get ready for our next exercise. Whew. Starting to feel it. All right, so we're going to do single arm press, dumbbell and band. Now here's one of the cool little things about bands. The more you stretch them, the more resistance you get. So you can adjust your resistance level on the fly. So let's say that we already have our dumbbell. We're just anchoring it under 1 foot. You could always, if you wanted to, stretch it out more. You can even change the angle of the pull like this. All of a sudden now I have a lot of resistance as I press out, which funny enough, that's a really strong contraction of the delt. I've never done that. I actually want to try opposite here just for a second. Worth playing around. Oh yeah. That's good. So just so you can see it from the front. So instead of anchoring under the same foot, now I'm having to press out to the side, which is a lot of what I'll do without bands. When I'm pressing, I don't just think about pressing in here. I have a tendency to use a lot of triceps when I do this. So I try to press straight up or even think about pressing out to the side just a little, even though it doesn't look like it, but that's, you know, what I'm visualizing. But with this, now I actually have that resistance. Trying to pull my arm back in is forcing me to press out a little bit. I actually think I want to do a set like this. So I'm going to go up in resistance. We'll do 1 set without the dumbbell, and then we'll add them together. I've been training with bands since 2008. And starting in 2017, I trained with only bands for 4.5 years. And it's funny, in all that time, I've never done this. Don't know why, never thought of it. Oh, that feels awesome. Oh. So I can tell you what feels unique about that. And that's what we talked about at the very beginning of this workout. Most of our presses have a tendency to be so anterior delt dominant. With this angle of pull, I'm feeling a lot more of it in my middle delt than I normally would on a press, and I actually really like that. Matter of fact, this feels so good. Part of me is tempted not even to use the dumbbells, but we'll do it just to compare and contrast. Here we go. That's cool. See? It's always something to learn. You know, through the years, I've experimented with so many different angles, and truthfully, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But, you know, you just have to try different things, and every once in a while, you'll stumble across something that you really like. That's how I started with a cable machine, then I did them with bands too, but yeah, this movement for chest, really just getting in here and just pushing across the body and getting that really strong contraction more to the inside of the chest. So that was just messing around one day, and then liked it so much, felt so good that I just kept doing it. You can find videos on that going back to like, I don't know, 2015. And I've seen a lot of people duplicate it since. I should have named it. You don't get credit unless you name it. All right. So I'm going to drop down in resistance since we're going to add the dumbbell in. I don't think you need to go very heavy with these. I'm going to keep it really light. Let's see how it feels. And I think what we should feel with these is, because with weights, typically, you're going to feel it more at the bottom end compared to bands, because bands, you feel stronger resistance level as you stretch it. So you feel it more at the top. So I think the combination, you should get a really nice resistance curve all the way through. Just got to kind of position your elbow inside that band. Oh boy. One more. That's good. So I think it's the combination of, we just did middle delts before this, so they're already pretty fatigued to begin with. And then, like I said, just that angle of the resistance lights it up a little bit more. Definitely more than any other shoulder press I've ever done. All right. Nice. You know, without diving like too much into the science of some of this stuff, you just have to think about some basic mechanics. So what is the direction of that muscle fiber? And that'll kind of give you an idea of what you're using more. For example, middle delt fibers are running this direction. So it makes sense as they shorten, as they contract, this is going to be your best movement for targeting those muscles. Muscle fibers in the back are running this way. So it makes sense. It's pulling your arm backwards. So with this, the reason I think, and I'm just thinking on the fly here, that as we're doing these, one of the reasons why you feel it in the middle delt, we don't just have this resistance on the vertical plane with the weight. We don't just have it at an angle here with the band, but as I'm pressing, it's also stretching that band across my chest, and it's creating this resistance front to back as well. So I think it's making that middle delt fire a little harder. That's an awesome exercise though. That felt good. As far as comparing and contrasting, I like them both. I don't know if I'd pick one over the other. All right, let's get this done. Like I said, so this band is stretching across the front of my body, so it's wanting to pull my arm forward. So to counter that, having to push backwards. Man, I'm telling you, after 34 years of training, that's probably the most unique feel I've ever had in a shoulder press. Like this actually might be my new favorite. That's 7, 8, 9, 10. Man, middle delts are smoked right now. Dang, it's good stuff. Good stuff. So I think we'll do some light trap work here. Do something different. Pick this up. That was awesome. Really, really like that. You know, it's a good example. There's things that you can learn in a textbook. Some things you just learn by messing around, trying different things. But one thing that I think is important with shoulders is you have to work them all the way around, front to back, if you want to have round shoulders, right? People talk about boulder shoulders. Well, that's being fully developed. It looks pretty funny. And you can tell guys that bench press a lot and don't do a lot of rear delt work. Not only is their anterior delt stick way out, but then they also have a tendency to roll the shoulders forward a lot. So you want that balanced look, you got to hit the whole thing. It's like you can tell when someone has a preference or maybe a little bit of a genetic predisposition for bigger biceps, but they have no triceps. It looks funny. It's like you say, yes, they have big biceps, but they don't have big arms. So same thing with shoulders. Big anterior delt, but not big shoulders. Early in my career, so when I first got into sports nutrition, this was around 2000, worked for Hall of Fame bodybuilder Lee Labrada and his company. And I remember he said something to me once that really made a lot of sense. He said, you know, the best bodybuilder on stage isn't the person who has some sort of standout body part, like, oh, look at that dude, he's got the biggest arms, or he's got a huge chest, or look at his quads. It's the guy where none of the body parts stand out because everything's balanced. That's the perfect physique. All right, I was saying traps. So the traps, or the trapezius, pretty interesting muscle. Bring this over here. Pretty interesting because the muscle fibers run in so many different directions. So most people think about traps shrugging their shoulders, but they also pull their shoulder blades back. So we can actually do a movement that's halfway in between. It's not up and it's not back. It's at an angle. Harder to do with weights. You can do it depending on how you position your body against your plane of resistance, being vertical with gravity. But with bands, we don't need gravity. So we can create resistance in any plane that we want. And so if you come over here to the side a little bit, you can see this. So now, look at the angle of the band. That's our angle of resistance, or our plane of resistance. And so now we're going to shrug up with a little bit of a squeeze backwards. I'm going to create a little more resistance. Grab closer to the anchor point. Get that squeeze. Control those rep speeds to make it a little harder. And a little mental exercise. Don't think about pulling your hands close to your body. Think about initiating the movement at the shoulder, and your arms are just going along for the ride. Nice. So it's interesting. It's where having good mind-muscle connection really comes into play. Because I could do the same movement, but get 3 different feelings from it. One, I could focus on initiating the movement slightly with my hands pulling, recruiting a little bit of biceps there. I could initiate the movement at my elbow, driving my elbow back a little, engaging the back a little bit more. Or I can initiate the movement at the shoulder. And that's what we want to do here. And that's where you have to have some discipline, some mental discipline when you train, if you want to train this way. You know, if you just want to do compound movements just for the sake of, you know, getting stronger, maybe it's for powerlifting, maybe it's for sports. Well, that's what compound movements are for, right? Getting all those muscles to work together. But when it comes to more bodybuilding style training, it doesn't mean you want to be a bodybuilder. It just means you want to target muscle growth. That's where mind muscle connection and the discipline overriding that temptation to recruit all those extra muscles and try to target a specific muscle group. As Frank Zane always said, to put muscle exactly where you want to put it, as opposed to just becoming a bigger version of your same physique. And when you're more disciplined like that, you're recruiting less of those other muscles to assist, then you don't need as much weight. Sure, I used to do shrugs with as heavy a dumbbells as I could find, but I was also using every other muscle I could to try to get that range of movement. So it's just a little different approach. I'm not saying that the other doesn't work. You can sit there and sling heavy weights and get pretty good results, honestly. But you're also putting a lot of unnecessary wear and tear on your body that will catch up with you at some point. Sometimes sooner, not later. I know plenty of dudes in their 20s with a lot of injuries. So imagine how that same guy's going to feel when he's my age, 30 years later. Like, I don't sit there and try to pat myself on the ass of, you know, having a great physique compared to a lot of these guys now. Not as big as them, not trying to be, not as ripped as them, but I've been doing this shit a long time. So my goal has always been consistency. A few more. One more. Nice. Whew. Make sure to always stretch out your traps after doing a shoulder workout. If those muscles start to get tight and lock up on you, get that super stiff neck, hard to turn your head, can even lead to headaches. So take the time to stretch out real quick. Typically, I'll do stretching after my light warm-up. I'll stretch. I stretch in between all my exercises when I remember. And then I try to come in with a cool down and stretch again. All right, so that's a wrap. We are done with shoulders. So I'll see you guys next week. And we're going to be hitting chest and triceps. I think we're going into week 8.